Kids are also like, and we tell them I'm a social worker, they always go, oh, you're the people that take kids away. I'm like, what? No, absolutely not.
You have to look back now to when you start and where you are now. What aspect of yourself has changed? You just keep opening new branches for me to like my mind's because I've been doing a lot of unpacking since Ramadan has passed, and just a month before that, into going deep down, like going so far down to find root causes for certain things. And you get shocked to discover certain things.
It's like a bottle.
Yes,
like you know, like a Coke bottle. If you shake it and you open the bottle and what's wrong with it?
Talk about what?
Yeah.
What are you meant to talk about?
Yeah, why are you getting you know what I mean? And social workers, in basic English, what social work do is social work. So when I'm a man, I should have this together, no one guys and
I'll
really
save it for 2 a.m. at night.
Yeah.
And start, because at the same time you need a sense of self-awareness.
Absolutely.
To be able to identify I'm doing these certain things because of so and so. And then you have to start there.
Dentistry, nursing,
dentistry.
Social work, and look at the people. So I don't like people to touch me with their feet. I don't like feet at all. Whether it's not clean socks, no socks, don't touch me with the feet. It's I would always advise people, please go and shadow someone before you go into social work, because I had never seen a social work in action. I've only just heard about it.
By having the sessions with one person and not with the family, that can also have a great impact.
I remember having one session with my client, I think last year, and this client it was such an emotional situation. I had to fight my tears. I had to walk away because I can't cry in front of the client, but I mean, it's that emotion that come up. So people have this perception, to block this person out of my life, I can't have them here around. I first want to understand yes, exactly. It's not good. For me, I rely on God. God is my source of strength,
Baby manipulative, and that was just something I thought about. I just want to get your opinions on that.
Babies or toddlers?
Babies.
As in, from which age?
From the very beginning, I would even say. Do you not think there is some sort of tricks that they play to get the parents or someone to like them?
I don't think so. I think that they haven't, in terms of what is this called? The psyche, the psychological aspect of a baby. I don't think that they have that capacity to be manipulative. I think that, if anything, it's more like attachment styles that may come across as manipulation. Because I don't know if you're referring to, maybe you could give an example. Because if you're saying a thing of this baby cries when they're by everyone else, but when they're by their mother, or maybe cries for their mother, it could be just attachment and not the baby manipulating whoever else by crying so that they can be. Because a baby can't speak, so it's probably their behavior that you're referring to. So I feel like it's attachment, not manipulation,
I also agree with her. At that point, the baby may not know a lot of things. It's more like 0 and 1s. So if I cry, they will come. If I don't.
And then toddlers?
Yeah, toddlers can kind of be manipulative, because by now they
by then they can read the expressions of their parents.
Yeah.
But then the question I'll have around that is, where do they learn these tricks then?
I think they socialized, and it's learned behavior. If they check response, if they know, if I throw the shoe up, my mom's going to come running, or my father's going to come running. They learn that behavior like we do in a normal life. So I feel like they're based on the responses of parents. That's where, or they could be just modeling behavior of their actual parents, as crazy as that sounds, because they're toddler. How do they model behavior?
That's just where my train of thought was when I was thinking about it, because they'll do certain things, right, that's clearly very manipulative, like you say, throws things around, or maybe throw a tantrum, just so that they can get the attention they deserve, which is manipulative behavior, right? But then where do they learn that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this, now you made me remind, you see, when a toddler, he fall by himself, he usually don't cry if nobody's around.
Yeah.
But if you see that someone is
watching,
he's gonna cry.
Yeah.
So that's why I think also that can also be a bit manipulative.
Yeah. Based on responses, I think that they just see it from parents or whoever the adult person caring for them, based on their response, and they go by that. If I got it right twice, surely the third time, and then it becomes a normal behavioral thing, a tendency. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you. You're the one that's very clued up with these things.
No, actually not.
You listen to her responses.
No. Not
But
really,
yes,
but yeah.
okay, now going back to the main topic for today, which is social working, of course, and the misconceptions around that area. Could you just run us your background, tell where you are now in terms of schooling and then getting into the workforce?
Okay, sure. So I finished high school in 2015 and I went straight into social work at UWC. Studied for 4 years. In that 4 years, it was a requirement for us to do practical work. So we'll go to throughout the 4 years, we'll have to do practical work at the agency or institution. That could be a hospital, could be a welfare society, could be wherever else, the options that are available to us. One of it is, it's compulsory that you work in a school. So in my second year, I was at a school. I've worked at as well, did my practicals at, they have offices, so one in and then I've also worked in Lavender Hill at the organization in Lavender Hill for a bit. So yeah, so that's what it is like in social work. You do practical work along with theory. So class time and practical time where you go out. And then I graduated in 2019 in December and got my first job at worked there
the same place.
Yes, the same place, but not necessarily doing the same work. So I worked there for 2 years, and then I started recently last year, about September, working for organization. Yeah.
So just starting back from the beginning, like in terms of starting social work, right? Was there something you always wanted to do, or how did that go about?
No way. So what happened was, actually I applied. So I worked after school in 2015. I went to do some holiday work, and I worked at, and I'd applied to university before. I think I applied for dentistry, nursing,
dentistry.
Social work, social work, and I think something else. But anyway, long story short, I was like, hey, I can't work here. Like this is not where I want to be. I need to go study.
Wait, what changed? Why didn't you feel like?
I think I was bullied where I worked. And it was in retail, so I feel like I was bullied a bit, and it just wasn't a comfortable space. I just didn't see myself being there forever. That was it. I saw bigger and I wanted more for myself. So then this one day I had to go I think it was for dentistry. I had to go to like a hospital or something that was a requirement, and then I went with my father to one of the public hospitals, and then I saw like, whoa, look what the nurses are doing. Look at the people. So I don't like people to touch me with their feet. With it's not clean socks, no socks. Don't touch me with the feet. And then I also don't like things like vomit and blood. Like I'm very like,
Yeah.
So I was like, how in the world how did I even think that I could be a nurse when I don't even like these things?
Even doctor and stuff like that. And surgeons as well.
Exactly. And the clients or the patients that came into the hospital, I was like, whoa, like this is scary. I don't feel comfortable. And then in that December, I think it was Fees Must Fall, started that year. I think, no, I'm lying, but there was something happening. And then the applications had already closed. I was already, accepted into nursing. And then I contacted UWC and I was like, please swap my second choice for my first choice. And they're like, listen, we can't guarantee that you'll get in, but we'll try and make the swap, because I was like, what am I going to do if I study nursing? Like, long story short, I got into social work, fortunately. And so, that's where I ended up. I was like, okay, right, let's do this. We're doing this.
So what was different about social work? I think that's the thing. I think a lot of us don't know. Like me and myself and him are not clueless around that area. Yeah.
When you say different in terms of?
So exactly what is social work?
Ooh, that is like
but there's many streams to it as well,
There is quite a bit of streams. So social work is basically looks at bringing about social change. It looks at empowerment. It looks at social cohesion, and it focuses on 3 different levels. So one, and I'm not going to use like the social work terms, but the one is just individual, and then community and families, and then the holistic, like country. So it would be micro, macro, and meso is what we call it. So we deal with all those peoples in society, and basically, like I said, to bring about change, to empower people, to wear the gaps. So what can we do to do this, to do better? There are different streams in social work. You can find yourself working in a school as a school social worker. You can find yourself working in corporate. I just forgot the term for that now. But you can also find yourself working in like jail, in court. Social workers are found everywhere. So
basically anyone can become a social worker.
I think that's one of the misconceptions as well. I think I read that point, right?
Yeah.
'Cause everyone thinks everyone can just be a social
I feel like
worker.
everyone can. You just need to I mean, when I got into social work, I was like, I would always advise people, please go and shadow someone before you go into social work, because I had never seen a social work in action. I've only just heard about it and done research.
Yeah.
And then when I got into my second and my third year, I was like, oof, is this something that I want to do? Like, I'm not
Why?
sure. Because firstly, like, it's so demanding emotionally, mentally. Work doesn't necessarily end at like 5 or at 4. You go home, it still consumes you sometimes. You still think about it. That's why it's important for social workers to get debriefing and supervision, as we call it. It's very important. It's one of the ethical, principles and values of social work.
So when you say debriefing and
Supervision.
yeah, what you mean? You have to know about the person or the thing you have to do beforehand, or
Yeah, so that would just look like monthly, or even for some organizations weekly, depending on how they're structured. You go and see either external person or internal person, who's sometimes either like a psychologist or a clinical social worker, and you'll speak about your work. Like, you'll speak about your personal life, how are you coping, and then that person will kind of like guide you and help you, like, hey, be careful, you might reach burnout, or you're doing too much, maybe you should take a break, or that sort of thing. So you speak about your caseload and your work that you do, but you also speak about like your personal life. So basically to get from your chest, kind of.
But that's interesting, because obviously I understand at the same time you probably then hear a lot of stories then from different people and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And are you then also, can we say, kind of like a therapist as well at the same time?
So in South Africa, we don't refer to social workers as therapists per se. We will maybe use the word counselors. So we do counseling, but also social workers can do admin work as well. You don't always have to do counseling. Also, another misconception that people have is that social workers remove children. Please.
Yeah, that was my next one. We were chatting about, remember beforehand?
That's not.
They're coming to get my kids. That's what people think, they're coming to get my
If
kids.
you speak to kids, they also and you tell them I'm a social worker, they always go, "Oh, you're the people that take kids away." I'm like, what? No, absolutely not. So that's like a really small part of social work. I think people watch it on movies and they're like, that's how you see it.
They're gonna call social security,
exactly,
social workers,
to remove the kids.
And then they come get the kids.
Also, it's important to note when the situation does happen that the child's removed, it is usually the last option. It's a very, very last option. It's because they exerted everything else. Usually the process is check if there's a family member that the child can go to. Is there a foster home that the child can, you know what I mean? Usually like a family member, so they keep it within the family, and then if all else fails, and we call in the Children's Act, there's a thing that we value, and we say it's like, what is the best interest of the child? The best interest of the child is of paramount importance. So if the child's best interest is compromised, the child needs to be removed, but it's a last option. We first see how can we help this parent or how can we help the caregiver before we remove the child. So we don't just remove children for the fun, of the sake of it. It's not a thing.
But I have one question on this. Like, if the best if the best interest of the child is to grow why are we removing from the parents, or why don't we like invest more on the parents to do better?
That's a great question. So of course like I said now, we first see how we can help the parent. So in an instance of the parent is on substance abuse, we'll see, can this parent go to rehabilitation? But in South Africa, and I can only speak for the context of South Africa, we're a third world country, and we're a developing country, so resources are scarce. Like, the increase in substance use is high in South Africa. The increase of GBV, gender-based violence, is quite high. So it would take a lot of resources to help that parent first. So, if we go, also you have to have a long waiting list for rehabilitation centers, for shelters for women who are abused. So now you wait for 2 weeks. While that waiting for 2 weeks, that child is being beaten, that child's being neglected, the child's not eating, not going to school. We cannot wait, so we have to remove the child, you know what I mean, because of our resources are lacking. And sometimes because of the parents behavior and tendencies, that is not the best interest. Yes, the child's best interest to be with the family, but I mean, if you are neglecting the child and you're abusing the child, that could never be the best interest of the child, you know what I mean? So the child has to be removed from the situation, and in most cases we have grandmothers and aunties who are willing to look after the child. But it's not always possible.
But it sounds, from what I've heard from you so far, the child aspect, like you said, it's a different side of social working as well.
Yes, that's only one side.
So on that side of it is like, you can't go into it with when you have a faint type of heart, right? Because obviously the type of things that you see or come across, it's just not for everyone to handle. And that's where I'll dive in, is like, can you give us examples or situations that you've been in that are, bad, and some good ones if there is?
Okay, I'll try to explain with like just protecting confidentiality. So with like you said, it's only one side of social work, and I think that yes, it's not for everyone. However, you can develop it. I myself am like also very sensitive, not sensitive, but quite emotional and intact with my emotions. So when I became a social worker, I just had to. I remember having one session with my client, I think last year, and this client it was such an emotional situation. I had to fight my tears. I had to walk away because like, I can't cry in front of the client, but I mean, it's that emotion that come up. So people have this perception like, oh, you must be put together. You can't cry. You can't do this. But you're a human being. You know what I mean? So yes, but I think it's a learned behavior. You develop it over time where you just like, listen, this is work and this is how it is. Like just build up strength. And I mean, for me, I rely on God. God is my source of strength, and also people around me, my social support structure. But to answer your question, example, so I'll use example of a child that I worked with while I was in my practice, while I was still studying. She was like suicidal and she ran away from home. And why I say this case was a bad case, we social workers are limited to like not necessarily working with mental health. We can identify signs and symptoms of mental health issues. Yes. So we'll be like, this looks like this person could have depression. Looks like this person could have borderline personality disorder. So we can do these assessments that we could do. There's one assessment called the DAS, which is like depression, anxiety, something. So that's like an assessment form that we can do, but we can't diagnose and say you have depression or whatever. So that was now in terms of psychiatric part, we couldn't do that. So I had this child, and so I had to refer her to the day hospital, but I don't know if her mother ever took her. So with social work also in some areas, you only have, like I was counseling at the time, so I only had like 8 sessions with this child. And after my 8th session, she was about 18. Yeah, I mean, she was turning 18. She was 17, turning 18. While she was still coming to my sessions, she had just turned 18 then. So you help with like 8 to 10 sessions because that's how far you can go. But then the child leaves your counseling session, you don't know if things were solved. So that's why I say like that's a bad part, not the bad case, but like a bad part of thingy. I would like to explore more about like, because I work in anti-human trafficking now, and there the cases are beyond.
Okay, we can get terrible. Into that one after this. But just going back to just something like interesting you mentioned now is you help someone, but then they leave and you never know where that ends up, whether they get well or not, and you can't keep contact or anything. Is that
you
also?
Can't. It's not. You can follow up and be like, hey, like after a month or 2, you can follow up, like and call the parent, because you wouldn't have contact with the child because it's a child. In case she turned 18, but you will follow up and be like, hey, how's things going? That's if they answer. If there is, if you don't hear from them, you just hope that things work. And she still had a child.
On this case, how do you measure the impact or the results of your work?
How do I?
Measure the impact or the results of your work.
Yeah, it's quite challenging. I mean, if you in that case now, it was 8 sessions, so I can see by the 5th session, has there been any change from the 1st session to the 5th session? Change in terms of the behavior. You call it the parent in as well, so I'll have a session with the parent. I'll go, how was X, Y, and Z's behavior over the past month? You'll do assessment with them where you have maybe some questions and go, hey, that you will do in the beginning so assessment is very important in social work. We do it throughout working with the client or the patient, whoever it is. In the beginning, when you see the client, you will first assess to gauge where this client's at, what's their headspace at, and then during the session we'll also do assessment, and at the end you will do an assessment. So that's how we'll measure. So if on the first experience it was like this child doesn't speak at home, now we come to the 5th session, I call the mother in and, hey, no, she's speaking now, she's watching more TV with her cousins and sisters. I can see, okay, there's some progress. So that's how we measure. So I go, okay, maybe I can do another 5 sessions and see how it goes. But as in with every other profession, you can only do so much. You can't save the world. You can only give the resources and provide. And social workers, in basic English, what social work do is social workers help you help yourself. So we believe that you already have the answers, and we are just pressing the proper buttons and empowering you to help yourself. But you already know what needs to be done. It's just a matter of asking the questions, aligning you with certain things, and etc. But we don't give you the answers. We don't say, hey, I'm gonna help you change your behavior. We go, you have the capacity to, and we are just leading you and guiding you in that instance.
That's interesting. Speaking from me and him, where coming from technical background in software, is the first approach you want to do is solve the problem. You know, that's what you're gonna do. You know, it's like, how am I gonna? Even in life, I'll find myself approaching something on how can I solve this.
Okay.
You know, and then the emotion side of it.
Understand the root cause of the problem.
Okay.
And then try to fix it immediately. You know, but then obviously there is what you were mentioning now. The soft skills are crucial in that, right? And then the being empathetic.
Yes.
You know, you've got to have all that in. But again, you've got to be objective, like you said.
Yeah. And also, like with you guys, it's probably like a product that you're working with. We're working with actual human beings. It wasn't made by my man, you know what I mean? So that's where... and
humans are complicated, right? Complex
absolutely.
creatures.
They are so complex, and they have a background which they were raised in a certain way. You know, they were modeled, like you said earlier, in this certain model behavior that they've seen, learned behavior. They were socialized in a certain way, and now they're coming and you have this amount of sessions to get to know this person from when they started, when they were very young, to where they're at now. And how do you help this person help themselves in that way?
A long podcast session.
I was actually, because sometimes you have a problem with someone or they go to your sessions, but maybe the root cause or the problem is somehow like how the person grew up, or sometimes it's a cultural thing. So do you think like by having the sessions with one person and not with the family, that can also have a great impact?
Absolutely.
Because let's say that the child is having problems because he grew up on a household that is full of violence or full of stigma or full of I don't know,
substances.
But sometimes the problem is not exactly with the child but with the family. So how you approach on those cases, if you figure out like this is something that he actually grew up with those problems.
So for most part, we would bring awareness to the parents and then, discuss that with the parents. So if it's a behavior where the child is like maybe, let's say a 7-year-old boy, he's acting out in school, he's bullying other kids, whatever, then it's a situation. Let's call the parent in. How was this child raised? You know, what's the father doing? What do you do? So yes, we do address it with the parents as well, along with the child, and we'll go, okay, maybe do research on this, or we'll help them and say, this is what's happening to this child now. And it's because of X, Y, and Z. What can you do better? So, you know, if it's a husband that's abusive, are you going to get rid of the person, or are you going to leave the person because this child's behavior is going to continue? You know what I mean? So we do have joint sessions with the family. It's very difficult sometimes to get the family in because like when I was working, it mean parents would have to take off leave, you know, and etc. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Now this brings another question to mind, which is, are people actually willing to come forward? The parents now, like you get situations where sometimes, you know, there's resistance, no one wants to come, you know, the child is not allowed to go to you guys.
Yeah, there is, but very seldomly. Okay, I don't work there anymore, but like very seldomly, sometimes it's the parents that's bringing the children in. For most part, it's the parents that brings the children in. So we don't have that resistance. They're more, not we don't, but they are more keen to then coming in because they are the ones that bring in the child in. So yeah, if it's involuntary, then there would be resistance. Maybe in a setting of like rehabilitation, then we might get resistance.
You just keep like opening new branches for me to like. Like my mind sparks and I'm like, okay, let's go into that.
Yeah, it's quite broad. I haven't even figured social work out completely because it's so broad, and you're just like, when you work in this section of it, this is what applies. And you have different laws and policies and just
Yes. And in terms of HR, how's that? Like, is there like strict HR in place? Because I mean, a lot can go, you know, haywire from what you said.
Social work and paperwork in the same WhatsApp group. Oh my gosh, you have to report on everything that you do. Lots of paperwork. They are very strong, or like strict with it for most part. We also have a council that we report to, so it's called the South African Council of Social Service Professions, and we have to register with them when becoming a social worker. So they govern, and they have like ethical principles and rules that you follow as a social worker. So things like confidentiality, if you breach that, if you have like a relations with like a client or whatever else, you can be held accountable by the council, and you can lose you can stop practicing basically. So when it comes to that, yes, we are governed by those principles and values. So we have to adhere to it, or we could be held accountable.
But that's hectic though. Has there been cases where someone has broken those and, you know, something happened?
Yes, they do, and they have like court cases and things like that.
Have you seen it personally?
I haven't seen any, but I've heard of it.
People are very, very careful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then you're talking about you now involved in the side, right?
Yeah. So I can't disclose too much, but yeah, I do work in and we just work with like those who have been before and help them get back to like normal life basically, and find.
How did you find yourself in that space? Or was it you chose to?
Yeah, so my friend worked there and there was a position open and then I applied. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to explore a lot of social work areas. Like I said, it's very broad. So I want to increase my skill set, etc. for the first 5 years. I think it's important for me to do that. So try to expose myself to different areas of social work so that I can be more employable, but also just so that I can, improve myself as a professional. So I was like, okay, from childcare or child protection to
that's
world spot.
Huge.
Yeah, it's a
and
huge transition.
What effect is that? Like if you have to look back now to when you started and where you are now, what aspect of yourself has changed
in social work? From
or just personally?
A lot. I think for me personally, I think I've built a lot of resilience because I work with people who are forced to, you know what I mean? I have a lot of resilience now because I see a year of situations all the time where it's like, this person, went through the most, and you go like, I should be grateful. Like this person was able to bounce back from this hectic, traumatic situation. I can do it too. Resilience, a lot more empathetic, but like most important, what I learned now is understand when I look at people or when I engage with people, I always try to understand where they're coming from, the behavior, where it stems from. So if we go and we say like this person is very hostile or they're very like, I always go like, how were they raised? Like
why?
Where
Basically
did this come from?
Before
as opposed to going like, oh my word, I just need to block this person out of my life. I can't have them here around. I first want to understand like, yes, exactly. It's not good. So like I always want to go to the background and be like, where does this come from? This behavior, girls who they consider as like loose or whatever else, like why is this girl like this, has she had an absent father, etc. So that is the most important thing that I've learned about myself, is that really trying to understand where people come from, and listening to their story. Like people's stories are so important, so that's like the most important thing.
Interesting you mentioned there about the role of a parent, right? What's your take on that?
Guys, parents are like, I feel like they hold all power in their hand. Not like God, but they have quite a lot of power. A lot
of influence on kids also, right? A lot of
influence. They really, and it's hard being a parent. There's no blueprint for being a parent. There's no one way of doing it. So I do think that it's quite a tricky thing to do. However, I think that parents just need to practice awareness and because sometimes parents are just stuck in their ways because of how they were raised. I think as a parent,
it's a thing that goes, like you normally hear, it's like, this is how my parents did it, but then there's something wrong with it.
Exactly.
But that's the norm.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that parents need to be more aware and conscious of like, how was I raised and do I want to do this for my kids? What are the results that it yield? Because sometimes parents go like, oh, I was raised like this and look how I turned out. I'm fine. But it's not healthy. Like it's toxic behavior, it's toxic behavior, and it doesn't mean that the child's going to turn out fine. And I don't even think that you are fine because it has negative impacts.
Even, take for example, with our African ways of dealing with emotions, right? From our cultures and thing is like, you don't speak about it, right? But that's because you grew up that way. But there is consequences to it, you see it later on in life. But there are consequences towards that.
And even in the colored family, I think like that is what a thing is, like you cry and like just cry, don't cry for too long. Like just pick yourself up and move quickly. There's no time to deal with sit in your sadness and confront it, and you just move on very swiftly. So I think that like the next generation of parents, like we need to be cognizant of that and do better.
But then where does one start? Because at the same time you need a sense of self-awareness.
Absolutely.
To be able to identify like, look, I'm doing these certain things because of so and so, and then you have to start there. Right? And which a lot of time we don't do. We don't go back to the root cause of why do I behave like this? Why do I do these things? For example, me and him had this conversation the other night. I'm not going to mention names, but it has to do with how we're having the conversation of how you treat people a certain way, and you kind of expect they'll do the same, but they don't, right? But you know, it's like you really fault them or you fault the background. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they just been
Yeah.
like stuff like that.
Or should you even fault any of the above that you're saying? Because like, why are you expecting them to behave in a certain way?
Yeah,
like you gave
all
them that
that.
treatment. Like why? Or the entire like
you
why?
kind
did-
of you kind
know?
of like, you know, put it there that can walk over you. So we had all these interesting conversations.
So yeah, for sure. I think awareness is important. Awareness and being open to people giving you feedback. I think that's important because we have blind spots, we have gray areas, and if you have surround yourself with people who can go, hey, watch out for that. I'm seeing you have that behavior. This is a red flag. Whatever else, be careful. So awareness, self-awareness, but also being open to people correcting you and then going back. Yeah,
and looking and reflecting upon it. As
yeah,
well.
exactly.
And
And
introspection, right?
Yes. So going back and going, where does this come from? Why? Where does this come from? What is it? What's the consequences of this? What's the results of this? How can I do better? It's not that easy. It takes time. Like it really takes time. Things like being vulnerable, like that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Like it takes
But especially if
time
you didn't grow up being vulnerable in the first place, right? So
Yeah.
that's also another thing. And then in terms of the type of, can I use the word racial here, of groups that you see, demographic is skewed to one side, like blacks, coloreds, whites. So how's the ratio look like?
Yeah, more people of color, to be honest. In my very little experience as a social worker, I think that I've mostly encountered people of color, but it also depends where you're working. Like that also dictates why. If I'm working in a predominantly colored community, then of course I'll have a clientele that's more colored. You know, if you work in a private school, you'll have more, maybe a clientele that's possibly like black and white, you know. So it really depends where you are working at. But there isn't, I don't think there's like one particular group that's more,
because everyone kind of like goes through one way or the other.
Dysfunction is everywhere.
Yeah, dysfunction is everywhere, yes. And then also in terms of, what was I thinking now? I lost my train of thought. Because she's got me thinking about so many things, so many branches.
No, but in terms of gender is also something, of course, like we know that most of the problems goes for the weak, the weak gender, which is the female, but there is any outliers or things that happens when it comes to men?
You know, like in my experience, I haven't worked a lot with men, and I think that is a gap in society.
That's a gap. That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
that's a great area. In like, I always say like we persecute rapists and murderers and people who commit gender-based violent acts, but whoever goes to sit with them and you're like, hey, where does this come from? Like, let's unpack where does this stem from, and then help them.
That itself is controversial, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, for sure. But I mean, someone needs to approach them and speak to them. So I think like that is the gap, though, that we have too little organizations dealing with men, but also because there's a lot of stigmatization amongst like guys, like men are going for counseling session. Bro,
No
what's wrong with
talk about what?
Yeah.
What do you mean to talk about?
Yeah,
My feelings?
why are you getting you know what I mean? Since when, like, I'm a man, I should have this together, you know, no one, like, guys don't
I'll
really...
save it for 2 a.m. at night.
Yeah, like they don't. How often do guys, I mean, you guys are guys, how often do you guys want to reach out and go to like search places or organizations that could help you guys in your area of life? I think go with the boys. And
no, even myself personally, to be honest, is because I've been doing a lot of unpacking since Ramadan has passed and just a month before that, you know, into going deep down, like going so far down, like to find root causes for certain things, you know, and you get shocked to discover certain things, you know, like, oh, that's why I'm behaving like this, you know. Thank you, mom. Thank you, dad. You know, and stuff like that, you know, and the way how you deal with society yourself. Because sometimes, look, for example, now I'm going to go back to the whole introversion, extroversion thing is some people will talk about, you know, the things going on, you know, openly and whatever and speak out, and then others won't, and they'll just hold it on, and you hold on, hold, and then you have outbursts. You know, people like that.
Yeah, it's like a bottle. You know, like a Coke bottle. If you shake it and you open the bottle and all of those things that you have internalized.
Exactly. And just I remember what she wanted to ask you is going back again to the parents, right? Is what do they need to change? Like, what should they know?
In terms of children or?
In terms of children, raising children. Like, what are some crucial stuff that's like, basically crucial?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that firstly, every child is different, number one. And to
That's a
make
good one.
active observations of your child, like I'm a firm believer of a child acts out because of something. This child, don't say the child's naughty. Yes, in some cases, the child's probably exploring and want to come on the table and do whatever else. Yeah, we have moments and we have room for that.
Yeah.
But also, just observe and like be attentive in terms of the child's behavior. Do research on the stages in which a child is in now. So there's a certain age, where a child is maybe exploring with their body parts. Don't punish a child and hit the child for wanting to touch themselves.
In the African culture,
exactly,
right?
and
that
so
conversations don't happen.
Yeah,
The bees, what's it?
the birds and
the
bees.
That doesn't happen.
Exactly. So then, like, let's.